Right, I'd like to invite Jason Wang, President of ZVCA. Please get on the stage. Rebecca Jago from the Last Shop Distillers, and Chen Jiang from VII Group. Henry Lee from Family Office Association. Have I missed anyone? It's quite a big panel. Save the best for the last. Who else is on my panel? Oh, Eduardo Clarence. So Eduardo, oh, hello. Can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
Hopefully you can hear me now. Hi, Lily.
Yes, we can. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry, I can't be there in person.
Yes. So the last session, we have a full team of 6 speakers. I'll quickly introduce is Jason to my right side. I just said is from President of the Zhongguancun Private Equity Investment Association. And Rebecca Jago flew all the way from London as the Managing Director of the Last Drop Distiller. Many of them probably don't know that brand, but I will leave Rebecca to talk it later. Henry, who is a very experienced family office principal, now runs Family Office Association. And Chen Jiang, a very successful second generation from China, runs the VIE. How to pronounce? I'm sorry, I asked you before. V Group. And Clarence, who is holding several roles. I'm here. I know you have another title, which we didn't print out, but I'll let you to talk out, is Director of the Kuanghua Group and a co-founder of Zeto. And you are also the president of the Hong Kong Elite Club. Did I say correctly the English name? 精英会主席. Oh, just step down. Oh, I didn't miss anything. And I have Eduardo Rothschild, who representing the Rothschild Foundation. I think you are sitting in your Waterstone Manor today. Thank you for joining.
I'm not in Waterstone Manor, but I'm not far from it. Yeah.
No, not far. You're private resident. Right. Let's move on to quickly the last session, which is quite exciting. We're going to talk the emerging future of the family office in Asia and Europe, and when new generation take the reins. So it's a quite evolving topics here, and I have a few questions here. Are you listening? Yes. So my first question, I think I'd like to pick Henry to answer the first question first. I mean, it's a popular question all the speakers can answer, is what are some of the key challenges the leading family offices in Asia, Europe, and beyond are currently facing in today's landscape? You can interpret in your own perspective.
I guess I can start by saying that there are certain universal concerns I think that many family offices around the world share. Obviously, among those are succession, the right, governance structure, issues like that. But as one does, and I get pointed this out very often in China, if you want to bring the discussion further home, is that it's a very relatively new phenomena in China because, as you know, society has really just come into its own economically in the last 50 years. So really, we're not talking about family offices that are really even past the first generation. So that, I think, makes the Chinese family office discussion rather different from the discussion of family offices around the world. Especially in Europe, where I think there's just a long history and tradition of family office structures and governance. But so that's on one level I want to say about the region. But then I think for families in this part of the world in particular, I think they're extremely sensitive to geopolitical tensions that are going on right now. And I think that that manifests itself in many ways. They're affected not only in their businesses, but I think they're affected in their portfolios. They're affected in their capital flows. And very often now these families are more spread out. So I think they're affected in multiple jurisdictions. So I think the Asian family offices in particular are sensitive to those things.
Thank you, Harry. I'd like to pass this question to Chen Jiang. Obviously, you are now the second generation running your family office and a family business. Just give us some of your thoughts during the whole generational transition stage. How did you manage that?
Okay. Sorry, to better express my thoughts, I will speak Mandarin. So, 因为我觉得，我是从来自浙江的，浙江大家非常清楚的话，那个民营企业非常多，而且很多企业他们都是上市公司，所以目前的话，浙江省面临最大的问题都是第一代跟第二代传承接班的问题。今年我觉得，浙江省也发生了几个事情，可能大家也听说了，都是几个大的一个集团公司父辈的话，突然一下子就生病就去世了，所以很多第二代的话，他们都是用被动的去接班。那么我觉得如果这个计划如果做得早一点的话，对整个家族办公室的话有很大的一个好处。那么因为我自己的话有个亲身经历，因为我差不多回国10几年，我也差不多花了10年的时间才能顺利的完成接班。所以我觉得在接班的过程当中的话，我觉得怎么说呢，我有几点心得。一个站在那个他们第一代的角度的话，我觉得这么多年下来，我总结了两个点。一个，如果我们的想法超出他们第一代的知识范围，他们的认知的话，他们觉得风险是非常大的，这个我觉得非常明显。那么第二块的话，我觉得作为第一代，他们非常希望投资有形的资产，包括一些固定资产啊，你只要看得见的一些资产，他们心里是很放心的。但是你只要看一些虚拟的，或者说一些资产像 IP 的，或者是他们看不到东西的话，他们觉得风险比较大所以这个我觉得是我们第二代跟第一代的话很大的一个差异那么我觉得在这个过程当中的话，我有几点心得，因为基本上用3个方法，我觉得是完成了这么一个工作。那么第一种方法的话，我觉得我发现第一代他们虽然知识面不管，因为他们学历水平都不是很高，但是我觉得他们基本上就是说很好学，所以我不会说用通过我的方式去跟他们说这个知识面是什么样，比如说类似于股权投资，但是我会通过第三方或者他们的朋友对这方面比较熟悉的去解释，这个比我去解释的话应该是好很多倍那么第二块的话，我也比较提出来的话，就是我们内部的话，尤其是我们家族办公室里面，我就采取了那个议案制，就像我们整个政协人大他们有提案制，我就采取了议案制。我们做任何决策，我都要写一个议案当然里面的投票权可能是我的比例比较高，但是我会充分给他们一些信任，也给他们听取他们的意见，他们很多涉及到的很多风险的东西，那我就可以规避所以我觉得目前我们我也制定了整个我们的议案的规则，整个做下来我觉得目前是很顺利的那么第3个的话，我觉得最好的话就是成功的案例看结果，所以我觉得这么10年来的话得到认可的话，主要是做了几个事情，他们是比较认可。一个是股权投资，虽然这个股权投资我是12年提出来的，我们11年上市的，我12年提出来，但是真正我们实施做的话是15年，16年发第一个基金，然后15年拿了私募牌照，那么到目前也投了30几个项目，已经有6家公司上市了所以包括我们整个收益的话可能超过上市公司所以这个是很好的一个点。那么第二个的话，我们就是全球化，包括这么多年的话，不光是我们客户是全球化，然后那个原来是基本上都是国内的客户，现在都是全球的客户，也进入了像戴姆勒、大众捷豹、路虎这种客户圈。那么这个跟他们是更高一层。那么还有一块的话，就是在整个国际的合资合作因为那个时候我们跟英国的Protein， 然后跟麻省理工学的 Vicinity甚至我们跟瑞典的 Hardex 的话曾经是我们的竞争对手，然后我们又跟他成立了合资公司，所以从这种种种的不可能然后变成可能的情况下，那么他们的话整个感觉就大幅改观，所以我觉得通过这种渠道的话是取得了他们的信任主持人丽丽。
谢谢陈总。Eduardo, I'm not sure. Are you listening Mandarin channel or English channel?
I'm listening on the English channel, so
Oh, good,
unfortunately I
good,
can't
good.
understand what you're saying, but
Excellent. So I can ask you a question now. So obviously, Mr. Chen, representing the very leading second generation from China, just talked about his experience by taking over the family business. Obviously, the Rothschild, how many generations now? Are you the 8th or 9th or 10th? And
I think I'm the 12th.
you're the 12th. Okay. Good number. And could you please give us some insight about the family transitional leadership? Because we met last time at the cellar and your grandfather came out and talked about Eduardo now is in charge. So give us some story in the background, please.
I wish that was the case. Sadly, I'm not in charge, but yeah, I'm happy to frame with some context. So it's fair to say my grandfather still plays a prominent role in running our family office. He is very much the decision maker. Below him is another generation. So my mother, my aunt, my uncle, who all play an important role. I'm, if you like, on the ground, trying to oversee the generational transition between those two. And some of the challenges that I find particularly evident are the new wave of sort of, if you like, social responsible investing, something that my grandfather's generation wouldn't have had to engage with on the same level that we've had to. It's almost seismic, the change over the last decade. And in terms of my role and my responsibilities is to ensure that there's still wealth creation, but there's, in a sense, more responsible wealth creation, or just more of an understanding of where our wealth is going and how it's being deployed.
Thank you. Mr. Wang, I'd like to ask you now, because you are the mentor in your association to lead a group of very excellent future generations to take the step to connecting with the European families. And what's your view on the first question?
好，谢谢。我用中文回答。这段时间呢，因为我在欧美啊比较多一点，就是说呢，而且呢，集中性的这1年多呢，就是我们家族传承这个话题就成为热点，也提上了可能可操作层面。那么这段时间呢，我在跟欧美家族的交流过程中，我也感觉到了，就是说，第一呢，中国现在应该说是第一代。那么应该说我们还没有一个真正的开始的时候提到日程，那么包括一些可操作方案呢，应该说还是比较模糊。同时呢，应该说1代和2代的这种中间的信任连接或者是机构还缺乏。那么现在欧美呢，应该说它时间比较久了，那么整个1代2代的接班机制，第三方的服务机构，相关的一些法律法规，包括他们一些比较优秀的榜样都在那里。那我想呢，可能现在我们在这个阶段的话，第一呢，重视程度应该是这个没有问题了。那么同时呢，我们相关的境内境外的政策，包括是机构，那么竞争的态势也出来了。刚才大家也很多都在谈到了新加坡、香港，包括现在瑞士、英国，那实际上包括最近中东也在往前在积极的争取。那么这样的境外的机构也非常多，境外的区域也非常多。那么境内的话，应该说我们现在也有很多在跨境离岸的政策中，包括海南呐，包括现在一些上海啊，这也在陆续的，包括北京也在重视这些家族财富、家族传承。那么这是一个好事情。最关键是什么呢？我们可能要找到相对的一些路径和方法。第一个呢，就是如何让2代之间的这种文化，刚才我们陈强总交流的非常好，能相对的去更加的形成共识。那么这个呢，有时候需要借助你比如说像我们这样的专业的协会，或者像我们这样的年龄的一些专业2代都比较信任的这样的平台或者是人或者机构，那么使2方面呢有一个很好的缓冲。另外呢，就是说我们可能更多的要有一些可操作性的榜样， 比方说欧洲这些家族，包括一会儿我们旁边的也要分享，就说他们家族成功的一些经验。那么同时呢，我们也找到身边的一些榜样，比方说我们也有一些家族呢走在前边，我们国内也有这样的，像我们今天在座的这个万安控股陈江总呢，他们是一个优秀的代表。我们身边还有一些已经走到前台了，2代接班的比较好的，比方去年我们组织了到新希望，就是40年过来了，那么企业如何传承下来，那1代和2代如何去很好的交接，那么老陈和新陈如何处理。那么同时呢，我们也有一些在专业领域中的一些榜样，比方说大健康领域，我们那个天士力，我们也是协会的比较优秀的一个传承接班非常优秀的一个典范。那这样的话呢，我们有一些实实在在的一些案例、行业、人，这样的话一些方法呢，使2代的话呢，这种很好的传承呢，就具有可操作性。时间的关系吧，我们可能还有很多这方面的经验或者最近的一些心得和想法，因为我们把这个已经列入到很重要的一个平台服务的内容，也是现在目前最大的一个刚需市场，也是可能整个社会很大的一个责任。好吧，我先介绍这么多，谢谢。
谢谢文会长。Clarence, would you like to add on? What's your view on the challenges of the family offices scope in Asia? Obviously, you're representing Hong Kong family offices.
Obviously, you know, we in Hong Kong, the development of families, family businesses, comparing to our very own mainland families are very different. And I'm 3rd generation in my family business. We are a property developer and property investor in Hong Kong. We're not a very successful case because we actually very concentrated on Hong Kong. More than 95% of our portfolio is focused in Hong Kong. But gradually over the past 15 years or so, I started, doing a lot on my own to actually, in previous panels, people talked about, it's about education, educating your elders, your parents, your grandparents, uncles, aunties. My case was a bit different. Back in 2005, I graduated in the US, and then came back to Hong Kong. Didn't want to do much, but then just so happened 2009, 2010, I started helping actually mainland Chinese SOEs and family businesses invest overseas. In 2013, I helped Wonder Group acquire the largest yacht maker in UK, the Sunseeker. It was a £320 million deal. Made my first bucket of gold on my own, and then started investing in startups. Back then, investing in startups to my family, it's like, doing something extraordinary and definitely did not fit my family's risk profile. So I started doing things on my own and trying to make them understand. I invested in companies like Lala Move back in 2013 in Series A. So, just on Lala Move's investment, it was, close to 200 times returns, right? So it's unheard of within my family, because my generation, there are 5 of us. And then, without, taking risk on my own, I would never be able to make them agree to invest in something like that, right? And then I did something, besides Lala Move, also invested in companies in the US, Europe, and mainland China. And I did something even more crazy. 2015, I founded my own startup, Ztor. If anyone lives in Hong Kong, you might know it's the 2nd largest e-commerce platform in Hong Kong. And then we sold to TVB 2 years ago. And then, you know, also it's very different from something that my family would do, right? We're in properties. We are a zero debt company. We don't even borrow construction loan. So, you know, it's our 51st year this year. So to my family, I'm always doing something that's against them, right? But gradually they will start understand, and gradually I got them to start doing direct investments in, you know, doing PE and VC investments, investing in, you know, different geographical locations, stuff like that. And the past 2 years, I basically didn't do much besides being chairman of the Y Elites Association, 香港精英會, 香港精英會. And through that, you know, we do a lot of youth work, and also doing youth work and helping different families, and to basically through that we also would, you know, learn a lot as well, right? And now I'm actually focusing on basically helping companies, you know, outside of mainland China to expand to Greater Bay Area, and helping you know, mainland Chinese companies expand overseas.
Thank you, Clarence. You naturally brought to my next topic. It's quite fascinating. Mainly the first generation in China are building from manufacturing infrastructure. So the second generation received, I mean, you are Hong Kong, received a Western education. They came back to China. They decided not to go ahead with the parents' venture and start something completely different. I'd like to bring the next question to Rebecca. So Rebecca traveled all the way from London, and she has a very good story as second generation family in the UK. Take the reign of the family business from her father, who founded the company at the age of 82. Is that right? Yes.
Is this on? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, but he'd worked in the drinks industry for many decades before that, and this was like a last hurrah for him and his business partner, and actually ended up giving me and my colleague, his business partner's daughter, the opportunity to join a very small business at a very early stage of its life, even though the two founders were both at the end of their careers, if you like. So my experience of working in a generational organization is obviously very different from some of the organizations we've heard about already. But it's really to do, I suppose, for me, the experience of working with my father and with his business partner, James, was actually a very joyful one, because it gave us an opportunity both to learn from their multiple decades of work in a fascinating industry, but also to try and bridge that generational gap about the way of doing business, and to take the best of what they had done and then develop the ideas and the ways of working to reflect the 21st century, largely speaking. I mean, my father's career started in the 1950s, so he'd had quite a long time doing things in a very different way before we got to the point we've reached now. Now, my father very sadly died in 2018, but he had a wonderful life. And I think that in terms of multi-generational offices, and whether it's a very, very small business like ours or a multinational family office, I think that combination of respect for what's gone before and the opportunity also to explore different ways of working, different opportunities, as you were saying, Clarence, to diversify, to look also at becoming more sustainable as a business is a really important transfer across generations of knowledge, of experience, and of an understanding of the market in which you're working. So somebody asked me earlier today whether I have a generation that is going to join our company business, and I'm sad to say that right now neither of my children shows the least bit of interest in our in our business, but we can all live in hope, because I think there is so much I've learned, and actually quite late on in my life, as my father did when he started the business, that one would hate to see lost. So I think for me, the great joy has really been both to work with my father and to demonstrate to him that I was worthy of his belief. And I think that's an incredibly important piece of respect, is that you respect what your forefathers have done, and then you hope that you demonstrate that you can do something else as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. You should give the audience some flavor about your father. I'm very proud of your father. You wanted to let people know who is your father.
Okay, well, very briefly, I'm not going to bore you all, but my father actually, just as it's the end of the session, my father got his job in the drinks industry by accident. He went for an interview as a photographer and came out with a job as a copywriter in an advertising agency. And his first client was a Gilbey's gin. And he then turned out not to be very good at being a marketing director either. So they gave him a job coming up with good ideas. And the most famous good idea he came up with was Bailey's Irish Cream. So that was back in 1974 and is still the world's biggest selling liqueur. So he had some really nice ideas during his very long career, including Johnny Walker Blue Label was another one. And then I think the last in the sort of world of multinationals was Chivas Regal 18-year-old. And when he and James started the Last Drop Distillers, the idea was to create a business finding and bottling very small quantities. I mean, we're talking sort of between 20 and 1,500 bottles per release of very old and rare spirits. And it's been a wonderful journey of discovery for me, not just about what I could do with my father and after he'd gone, but also about the possibilities for finding these exceptional spirits. So that's what I'm still doing. And every day, part of what I'm doing is paying respect to the incredible career that he had first.
Then you have to start the succession planning, because none of your children want to do that. I'd like to hand over to Eduardo. So we're talking about preserving the wealth and the legacy. Could you please tell us a little bit about Rothschild, your involvement in balancing the tradition in the family and bring the innovation part to grow the family business?
Sure. Firstly, I just want to say thanks to Clarence, the whole panel, for speaking so brilliantly. And what Rebecca said really resonated in terms of paying respect to what former generations have done, and how we have to sort of honor where they came from and what they achieved, and balancing that with today's social and cultural sort of pressures that I find, in my respect, working with my grandfather, very different. How the world has evolved over the last 50, 60 years in terms of what's expected from either those in wealth or either those creating wealth is a very different and difficult transition to manage. Personally speaking, very openly, that's the part I find most challenging. It's not necessarily finding opportunities for investment or finding opportunities to create wealth, but it's managing that transition between how should we do things and why should we do things. I think in regard to our family office, there's a long history of wealth transition and generational wealth transition. And that, in a sense, makes it easier for us, because I think my family has learned over the years on what works and what doesn't work. From a very early age, we're engaged in the family business. And at the same time, I think, Rebecca, this is something you're engaging with at the moment, is that if there's not a willingness or an appetite for the next generation to become involved in the business, then there's no sort of force or pressure applied to them. The way my family is run is that you must follow your passion. You're only going to truly engage and truly throw yourself into something which you truly believe and enjoy. And of course, there are sort of growing up pressures to get into the family business and follow the tracks, but as Clarence has clearly done so brilliantly, is this: if you see an opportunity and you believe in opportunity, you must follow that. You can't be stuck in where you are. Wealth preservation is just as important as wealth creation, but in order to truly create wealth, you have to go down your own path. And that's something that I've experienced, that I've done myself. Now coming back into the family business and trying to engage and bring together as many parts of the family as I can. Over 12 generations, the family's become quite dispersed, and so keeping that family sort of relationship intact is more and more challenging. Yeah.
Thank you, Eduardo. Mr. Chen, would you like to add a few comments on this topic? The innovation part, while you're running the family business, I know you're in the automobile industry, it's quite exciting, you know, sports car, electric car, all sorts of things. And the innovation part you have injected into the family business.
好的，因为像我们家族企业其实也是差不多1973年成立的，其实已经40-50年了。那么以前的话，我们基本上都是以机械的那个件为主。那么哪怕你上市了以后，它整个资本市场对你的估值其实不高的，因为它就是传统的制造业。那么一个方面的话，就是我们主动的想转型。那么还有的话，它整个市场因为从传统汽车到智能汽车，到以后新能源汽车的话，基本上都是智能化的。那么也迫使我们转型。那么还有整个客户层面，刚才我也讲到的话，原来我们都是以自主品牌为主，都是国内的一些客户。那么要往去国外的客户去拓展的话，它的要求啊，包括产品啊，其实跟原来的国内是完全不一样的啊。那么因为这美国的学习经历的话，那么回国以后我就提出了几个，一个就是整个战略的话就是跟国际上面一流的细分领域的公司进行合资合作。那么刚才讲到的话，我们英国的 Protein 它是人骨电机的，它应该说是全球 No.1 啊。那么跟瑞典的 Hardix 的话，我们做那个线控制动里面的 EMB 就是纯线控制动，目前全球商用车里面也只有它有这个技术。最核心的话，它原来是我们的竞争对手。那么我们可以双方坐下来谈的话，把它最核心的技术我们成立合资公司，这个我觉得这一步走得非常艰难。那么还有我们甚至跟那个麻省理工学院的委屈实体，我们共同研发这个无线中间系统。那么目前从整个国际标准，包括国内的国家行业标准的话，这个产品应该说我们也永远走在前列了啊。所以甚至我们跟那个以色列的 Mobile， 我们在整个智能驾驶、无人驾驶领域的话，在视觉上面，我们整个传感器上面，包括算法方面怎么合作啊？所以我觉得从新的技术。那么这个已经远远超过了我们整个父辈他们原来的知识水平了。因为像我父亲他是那个技术出身的，是一个老的技术人员，所以你只要看到一个产品一个图纸，他其实马上就知道。但是你对电子电控包括很多算法的话，那这个是他的能力范围之外了啊。所以就像我们第二代的话，也是要接起这个接力棒，把这个整个技术路线什么全都往前面推。那么还有第二个方面的话，主要是我们在研发投入方面。那么目前其实我们有5个研发中心，那么原来都是在北京啊、上海啊，包括我们在合肥啊几个基地。那么为了适应我们整个外资客户，像戴姆勒、大众，因为他们都是欧洲的客户，那么他们也需要我们在海外有研发中心。啊，所以3年前的话，我们在匈牙利布达佩斯又成立研发中心，那边的话差不多已经有20几个研发人员，全都是涉及到我们整个智能驾驶、无人驾驶的算法。啊，所以像这种铺垫啊，这种布局的话，那肯定也是超出了它原来的水平啊。所以我觉得从很多层面，从技术，包括产品，包括我们在未来的整个产品的研发、技术路线，那么我觉得。回来从国外回来以后的话，我觉得对公司的未来长远发展应该是做了一些实际可见的。然后从目前看的话，应该说我们的前瞻性是做的比较早的这一些布局。好，丽丽。
Yeah. You already led to the next topic is the private investment trend cross-border, because as you talking about the automobile part, the most well-known European company, Chinese owner company actively in European markets, the Geely Group, which they bought a Volvo several years ago, and recently they acquired 7% of the Aston Martin, which it's a fascinating deal because Aston Martin hold the share for a long time before they agree to sell to Geely. So I'd like to ask Henry, would you please give us a few thoughts because you work across various family offices, and what's the investment trend in the Asia family office landscape?
Yeah, so without a doubt, as families are getting more sophisticated, and I think they've transitioned in many ways from their operating businesses to funds, as we've seen, and from funds, they're really becoming direct investors in their own right. So they're constantly on the lookout for direct deals. So as opposed to blind pool funds, I think families in particular now are focused on co-investments because they know what those projects are. They're focused on sourcing direct deals, and they're actually syndicating deals as well. So more and more, I think you're going to see families act as, in effect, GPs or from the sponsors in deals. And I think that is going to have, again, a greater and greater impact on the whole private equity landscape.
Thank you. So the co-investment platform is a quite big trend at the moment by single family office collaborate together and find a deal and do similar crowdfunding direct investment. This is about the collaboration, which I think Mr. Wang has been exploring for your association members. Would you please give us some thoughts about the collaboration among family offices, not just Asia, Europe, globally?
因为现在我认为可能从高维的角度上，最重要的可能要家族传承呢，在国际合作上要跨出一大步。所以最近我们也在探索把这种国际家族传承合作联盟搭建起来。那么它的意义呢，第一，从方法论来说呢，我们现在的市场包括技术，它已经是全球化的。包括我们现在下一代的接班人，多数呢，他受到的是国际教育背景，那么对于价值观的话，应该说没有那么大的障碍和上一代相比。那么国际化的合作呢，应该说空间会更大。第二个呢，就说现在的有些行业，比方说 Rebecca 这个行业呢，就说时尚这个行业，可能说相对来说呢，它变化没有那么根本性的发生，但是有些行业，那刚才讲了，像汽车这个领域，可能从传统汽车到新能源汽车，它发生的变化是非常大的。那么在这个时候的话，那么经常会出现现在我们国际争议的，也就是供应链呐，人才啊。包括很多的要素市场呢，那肯定不是在一个区域能解决的。所以如果是这个时候我们没有国际化的资源，没有国际化的平台，没有国际化的合作伙伴，那么驾驭起来应该是难度是很大的。所以你这个周期肯定跨越不过去。还有就是说现在确确实实的，那我们资本这个要素呢，大家都看到了。第一代呢可能只是产业，下一代呢，包括像罗斯柴尔德家族这样的，它应该是更多的是战略、金融的全要素的配合，那么全要素的整合，在这样的市场下呢，那么我们新一代的这些优秀的接班人呢，更多是国际化的背景，更多是金融背景，或者是更多的喜欢做一些金融。那么在这个时候，你如何去用金融的这种手段支撑原来产业的两条腿走路？那这个时候呢，它要求你的国际化能力，对政策，对相关的金融的这种产品，那么对金融人才的组合，那么这个能力要求强了。所以我想呢，在这样的一个大的需求下，那么像我们 ZVC 这样的国际化的这种金融平台、科创平台、人才平台，那么政府这个要素平台就会很好的来赋能这些转型的家族传承的企业，而且更多的是赋能这个接棒的这些优秀的青年的年轻的这些传承人，那么使他们呢更有力量能跑起来。 国际化呢，我认为是非常非常重要，是不可或缺的。而且现在在国际化比较难的这个环境下，我们更要坚定的走出国际化来。那么国际的家族的手拉手，我认为是我们现在要做的重要的，应该说也是一个使命，也是一个责任，也是现在我们必须要做的工作。好，谢谢。
So that's very interesting comments. I'd like to hand over to Eduardo because we're talking about cross-border family office collaboration. So from and the Rothschild Foundation, are you looking to the collaborations with other families in the market? Probably you are not yet strong. Just for example, what's your kind of cross-border collaboration strategies under the Rothschild Foundation? Do you do co-investment with other families?
Yeah, so what Henry said, I think resonates with where we've moved to over the last few decades in terms of seeking to be more GP and co-investments with other family offices. And we do work with other family offices as much as we can, particularly in the US, and not a great extent yet towards that. We try to be very careful. We have a long history and a reputation that we're keen to preserve. And so we do everything with caution. On the foundation side, it's slightly different to the family office side. The foundation airs more on the side of managers and less sort of co-investments where we're the GP. But in regards to the family office, that's where how we do things. We seek to be direct holders, direct investors, GPs, rather than in a sort of blind pool fund. Absolutely.
Have you collaborated with any Asian family business partners?
We haven't collaborated directly with any Asian family offices. We've had a very profitable exposure, in particular to China, via a manager called Hill House, who we formed a relationship with 20 years ago or so. And so we've had exposure, we've had the right amount of exposure, but direct collaboration with family offices based in Asia or China, no, we haven't.
Thank you, Eduardo. Clarence, would you like to add on this aspect to talk?
Well, basically, about 10 years ago, I helped my family invest in, started doing deal-by-deal based PE investments with a manager called Welkin Capital. It's also founded by a few second, third generations of different families, Hong Kong families. Families with background from, ranging from Shanghai, Macau, Hong Kong. Our first investment was a school in Beijing. So it was doing deal by deal basis to actually educate my family members because we never did any PE investments before that. So we are 99% focused on real estate. And through that, gradually, investing in different companies, gradually would, and then a few years later, we started investing in the holding company of Welkin Capital as well. And most recently, we just started. I also joined Welkin as one of the partners and managing directors. And so all the partners within Welkin, we are all second, third generation of families, and we also work with many different families and started to basically set up different funds, more focused. We have a private credit fund. We have originally we were going to do a listed investment trust in UK stock exchange, but then last year was a bit tough, so we just postponed it to this year. And we also doing co-GP funds with different city governments within mainland China to basically invest in different to invest in different companies and also attracting different businesses or manufacturers to different cities and basically helping them you know, to more like a hands-on approach rather than just passive investments. And also helping different city governments attracting companies, more well-established companies that are overseas companies to expand to China. So through that, it's completely separate from my family business, but also we have a platform that you know, anyone is welcome to join, and basically any new ideas and all, we would, it's more like a multi-family office, but at the same time, we are also helping our family to create, you know, doing wealth creation and wealth preservation.
Thank you, Clarence. We have had a very insightful discussions, and unfortunately, we're running out of time. I'd like to give the audience some opportunities to raise questions to our fantastic speakers. Anyone want to ask any questions? No?
I'm not sure if this is the right question for this, but I wanted to touch about philanthropy, if that's possible. Is there any sort of model of being conscious about some social impact that you want to achieve as a family, and having your investments have some commitment towards that? Is that part of, this is just a general question to anyone.
That's a very good question due to the time stream. So that's why I took off the list. So Eduardo, would you like to pick on this philanthropy, social impact investment?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question very well.
The philanthropy, social impact investment among all the leading family, next generation during their investment activities. Are you dedicated to philanthropy, social environment investment?
So the first challenge is aligning the family on what aspects, where we want to make the greatest impact. Is it in child hunger? Our policy at the moment, from a philanthropic perspective, support areas which are going through, sorry, I'm losing connection, I think, I'm not sure. Arts and culture is somewhere where we've been particularly strong, and a particular focus, particularly through the pandemic. And the real challenge for us is each person has their own philanthropic cause within the family. So each person sort of gravitates towards an issue more than others. And it's something that my grandfather's generation didn't necessarily wrestle with, or doesn't necessarily pay a great enough attention to. And so aligning the different generations in terms of how much we give away, where we give it away, what impact are we trying to achieve? Those, if you can answer those questions, then you're 90% on the way.
Thank you. Anyone want to answer this? Claire? Oh, Henry?
I think that safe to say now that, like in the institutional world, even families have very much an ESG requirement for almost all their investments. So I think it's becoming more and more conscious. I think the philanthropy part is, in Asia anyway, a little bit slower than the rest of the world. But I think they're catching up. I think it's a matter of organization. I think a lot of philanthropy, to be honest, in the West is driven by tax. And I think tax is less of a concern actually in this part of the world, but it will be over time.
Thank you. I needed to close this session now. We're running out of time. And I'd like to thank you, all the panelists, for joining us today. Thank you very much. Please do stay and join the drink. And I'd like to invite our Deputy CEO, Clive, back on the stage to give the closing remark. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Many thanks to Lily and our panelists. Thank you particularly to all our panelists on that last session. What a lot of thoughtfulness and openness there was on that discussion, as there has been throughout the day. We're running a bit late, so I'll keep this short and sweet. One of the few drawbacks of coming to Hong Kong from London is the jet lag that you get. I was lying awake at night a couple of nights ago, and rather than counting sheep, I was trying to count the number of times I think I've visited Hong Kong during my life. And I came to the conclusion it was about 80 to 90 times. So if you think that each visit's maybe 4 days, occasionally with an extra one thrown in for a round of golf, by the way, all the invitations welcome for the future. But it works out to about a year of my life that I've spent in Hong Kong. So though I've never lived here, I feel this is part of my life. And it has been an absolute pleasure to return to Hong Kong, first in April before we did this event, and now this week, to see Hong Kong open for business. I wanted to say business as usual, but I think we've discovered today business as usual is not really a thing in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is always reinventing, it's always taking initiatives, it's always trying to move forward. So to paraphrase Patrick from Deloitte earlier, I think we have definitely had the full buffet of discussions today, maybe washed down with a couple of shots of Bailey's as well. We've touched on so much and there's so many important issues. I know a lot of you may well be new to OMFIF. If you like what we do, please come again. We'll be back in Hong Kong certainly next year, if not before. We'll have other events across Asia coming up as well. OMFIF's about creating networks and connecting people. Hong Kong is, as we were saying last night at a dinner, it's a super connector. To have just been one little part of the cogs that connect Hong Kong to China and the rest of the world today has been an absolute joy and a privilege. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to all our partners. And thank you most of all to all of you for coming today. So thank you very much indeed. And the bar next door is open. And if you've been with us for the 9.5 hours since we started, please do come along and join us. And even if you haven't, please do so. Thank you very much.